It turns out that this recent election was not about healthcare, wasn't about education, wasn't about climate change, wasn't about the economy or criminal justice or immigration reform. What it really turned out to be was a question of whether or not, unbelievably, we remain a democracy. And thank God Joe Biden and democracy won the election. But we have got to ask ourselves a whole lot of questions when we think back about where we are right now. And most importantly, I think, is how do we do everything possible to make sure that we become a vibrant democracy, that we do exactly the opposite of what Trump and his authoritarian friends want to do. And clearly, some of the answers are that we have got to eliminate and end the Electoral College. Turns out that Joe Biden will end up receiving some 6 million more votes than Donald Trump. That's a lot of votes. And yet, if it weren't for a couple of 100,000 voters in Pennsylvania, in Wisconsin, in Michigan, in Nevada, in Arizona, Trump would have won the presidency. That does not make any sense. If we believe in one person, one vote, we cannot continue a situation where a few 100,000 votes in 5 or 6 states can determine who the next president is. Second of all, we need to get rid of this terrible Supreme Court decision on Citizens United. Hasn't been a whole lot of discussion about it recently, but the truth is that billionaires in both political parties, both parties, contributed hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars into the political process. And that's just not good. You're not going to end up with a government that represents the needs of ordinary people when billionaires are spending huge amounts of money to get candidates elected. So what we have got to do is continue our efforts to overturn Citizens United, and we have got to move to public funding of elections. Terribly important. Furthermore, what we learned in this election and what we saw it every day with our eyes is the incredible degree of voter suppression which exists out there. So it's not only that we have a corrupt campaign finance system exacerbated by Citizens United, but in state after state, you had leaders making it as difficult as possible for people to vote. You know, we did send a man to the moon. You don't have to wait 5 or 6 hours online in order to cast a ballot. There are ways that we can make that more simple. So we have got to address the whole issue of voter suppression, which most often is directed, targeted against people of color, targeted against young people. In fact, targeted against any group of people who are likely to vote against Republicans. And then we have to deal with this issue of excessive gerrymandering, where you have these convoluted districts that are created in order to maximize the districts that Republicans will end up representing in Congress or in state legislatures. So you're going to have to need groups to come together, Democrats, Republicans, independents, to come together to work on what is a rational, geographically based district that sends its people to Washington or to the state capital. I think the last point that I think we got to be thinking about when we talk about revitalizing American democracy is how do we bring more people into the political process? How do people understand that in a democracy, their voices and their ideas matter? How do we grow grassroots democracy all across this country? And I got to say that in that regard, our progressive movement is making significant progress. We have fantastic grassroots organizations all across this country who are involved in deep conversations, deep canvassing with constituents from one end of America to the other. So there is a lot to be thought about as we reflect upon this election. Donald Trump is an authoritarian who has done more than any individual in modern American history to undermine American democracy. That's the simple truth. And our job is to understand why he has been as successful as he has been. He got over 72 million votes. But more importantly, how we build the kind of vibrant democracy that the people of our country are entitled to have. So a lot of work has to be done out there, and I look forward in the coming weeks and months and years to be working with all of you. So thank you very much. Take care.